Hey darlings, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time on my channel, thank you very much for coming by. Please subscribe to my channel and turn on your notification bell so that whenever I post a video you get to watch. So today I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to make this high-low blouse. It's a free size blouse and very comfortable and elegant at the same time. It's casual as well. So it's going to be a very quick tutorial. As you can see, the neck has a knot tie turtleneck design. From the back view, as you can see, if the knot tie is taken up, you can see it has a little slit to enable the neck to go in freely while wearing the dress. So without much ado, we'll get into the tutorial. Now for this design, I used 2 yards of chiffon fabric. You can as well use any other lightweight fabric you desire. It's going to give you a similar effect. Now to cut out the front piece, I'm going to be cutting out on fold, and what I did was to divide the circumference of the hip measurement into 4, and on that 1/4 of the hip circumference I added 8 inches to that measurement, and that 8 inches will help me to create volume for the lower part of the blouse. Now this 8 inches I added is not a standard. You can choose to add more or less to it depending on what you want to achieve. Now for the full length of the top, I measured about 43 inches long. You can choose to add more to the length or reduce it depending on how you want yours to turn out. So after folding in your fabric and determining the length, we are going to go over to marking in the measurements. So guys, at this point you have 2 options. Is either you mark in your measurements, or you can simply place your basic bodice pattern on your fabric, matching the center front to each other at the folded area of your fabric. Then now, as you can see on this pattern, at the side seam right here, there's no seam allowance to it. This is because I'm going to be adding few more inches to the basic bodice to create more volume for the blouse, since it's a free size blouse. And also, if you've noticed also on this my basic bodice pattern, my dart allowance is still there, which is 1 inch dart allowance. I'm not going to remove it because I'm still going to be needing volume for my blouse, so there's no need removing it. So what I'm simply going to do is to add 1/2 inch at the bust line area right here, and I'm further going to add 1/2 inch also at the waistline, not minding that I have 1 inch right here already. So I'm just going to add 1/2 inch at the waistline of my blouse. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to work at the bottom part of the blouse. As you can see right here, I've added these already. Now I'm going to be skipping the hip line over to the bottom part of the blouse. So I'm going to measure right from the center front of the blouse. I'm going to be measuring the 1/4 of my hip circumference, and I'm going to add 7 inches to that measurement, and I'm going to mark it right there. As you can see, I've marked it already right there. And the next thing I'm going to do right now is to connect it from the side seam area, from this point right up to the waistline, then to the bust line area. So right here, to determine the length of the front part of my blouse, what I did was to mark it at 27 inches. You can choose to add more to it or reduce it. So now I've marked that already. What I'm going to do right now is to connect it all the way to the side seam to create a curve for the front part of my blouse. Now for the neckline area, I'm going to be leaving it at 3 inches by 3 inches as it is on the basic bodice pattern. Now the next thing I'm going to be doing now is to mark this out as it is right there and connect it right to the bust line area. And now after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to add in my seam allowance from this point onward. I'm going to be using 1 inch seam allowance at the sides, and I'm going to be marking it just as I did for the first marking I did for the side seam. Then I'm going to be connecting it together. So now the next thing I did was to add 1/2 inch seam allowance at the front side of this curve for the interlock weaving I'm going to be doing there later on. So after I cut it out, this is what it looks like, and we are going to go over to cutting out the back piece of this blouse. Now to cut out the back piece of this blouse, the only difference right here is the full length. Okay, mine is about 3 inches more than the front side, but the side seam measurement remains the same. You can choose to make yours like up to 5 inches or more longer than the front side because it gives it more elegance, but due to the fact that I have shortage of fabric, that is why I did it like this. So I first of all marked out where the original side seam is, and from there onwards I'm just going to create a curve to meet the center back of my fabric. And then the next thing I did is to also mark in my seam allowance for the back side of this blouse. So the next modification I'm going to be doing right here is at the armpit area right here, and the first thing I'm going to indicate is the middle part of this armhole right there. As you can see, I've marked it in already, and what I'm going to do right there is to mark about 1/2 inch on that area, and I'm going to connect it right from the shoulder area all the way into the armpit area to mark the back bodice. And then that is almost it. So that is the modification I did for the back piece. Now the next modification I'm going to be doing is at the neckline area for the back side of this pattern, which is to mark in 1/2 inch right there, because that is a high neck. That's why I marked 1/2 inch right there, and I'm smoothly going to connect it to the shoulder area. And after this is what it looks like. And then after cutting it out, I'm just going to create the slit for the back side of the blouse. But first of all, I'm going to be notching the center back area before I open it up. Now that I've opened this up, as you can see, from the notched area of this blouse, which is right here, I'm going to be measuring down 4 inches, and I'm going to be marking it out on a straight line. So now after doing that, this will serve as the guide for our slit. So I'm going to be cutting through this area all the way to where I marked in right there, and you're just going to be cutting through simply from there like this. Now right away after slitting this, I'm going to be cutting a facing for this slit right here, and I'm going to show you how I did that. So I slided in a piece of fabric behind this back bodice. As you can see, I've made some markings right here at the neckline area on the facing fabric to trace out the shape of the neckline area. And as you can see it right here, this is the tracing I made on the facing piece. And then also at this shoulder line area, I measured about 4 inches from this point to this point, okay, to trace out where the facing is going to stop. And then also I took note of the length of the slit that I marked on the back bodice, and from this slit point where the slit ends, I'm equally going to take down about 5 inches or more space away from where the slit ends, okay. And then the next thing I'm going to do right now is to take this off and show you how my facing looks like. So I strongly recommend that you cut your facing before slitting your back piece. It's easier like that. So now that I've made all these markings, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out. Now to sewing proper, you're going to open up the back piece right side of the fabric, then you place your facing right side to the back piece of your blouse. Then the next thing you need to do right here is not to sew on the neckline area, because you're not facing the neckline area. You're only going to face the slit area of the back piece by sewing by 1/2 inch up below, like 1/2 inch below the slit point up to the other side of the slit. Now after stitching this, the next thing you need to do now is to cut through more on that slit area, very close to where you ended your stitch at that point. so that turning over to the front side of your fabric will be way easier and the slit will be neat. So now after turning it up, this is what it looks like. You're going to sew on your interface onto your main fabric. Now you're going to be placing the back and the front piece right side to each other. Then you're going to join it by the side seam all the way to the end on both sides of your blouse. Next, I went on to join the shoulder seam of the blouse right from the neckline area down to the shoulder slope. Now the next thing I'm going to do right now is to prepare the collar for this blouse. Now for the collar of the blouse, I cut a strap of fabric that is about 60 inches long. Now I want the length of the collar to be about 1.5 inch after sewing, so I cut the length of 4 inches right now. That is, when I fold it in, it becomes 2 inches. Then I'm going to use 1/2 inch from both sides for stitching onto the neckline area. So now I measured all around from center back to center back of the neckline of my blouse, and I take note of that. Then I folded the strap of fabric into two. Then I notched the midpoint from the top and the bottom part. I notched both of them for indication purpose for sewing ease. Then what I'm going to do is to open this up right now, as you can see it. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to fold this into two, but first of all I'm going to turn it to the right side of the fabric. Then I'm folding it into two at the wrong side. Now after folding it into two, what I'm going to do is to make sure that I match the notched part, which is the mid part of this strap right here on both sides. I match them together. Then what I'm going to do is to further divide the all-round neck measurement I got for the neckline into two. Then from this center front, I'm going to be marking half of it on this side, and from this center front I'm going to measure half of the neckline measurement on the other side. And then after I measured it out and I marked it on both sides, what I'm further going to do is to stitch from this marked area all the way to the end of the strap. And then I'm just going to start from this area as well to stitch 1/2 inch all the way to the end. So now that I've done that already, as you can see, I stitched by 1/2 inch. Then the length of the collar remaining is about 1.5 inch, as I mentioned earlier on. Now as you can see, at the end of this strap I also sewed the tip of it. So I'm further going to turn this inside out. So now you can use this dragging method to turn out to the right side of your fabric for the collar side, or you can use a ruler or a hairpin or needle and thread, depending on the method that you're comfortable with. Right now, after turning this to the right side, the next thing I'm going to do now is to stitch this collar onto the neckline area. Now this is the notched area at the center front, and now as you can see, I'm just going to pick this collar and I'm going to be matching it right side to the wrong side of my blouse, matching it to the notched area of the center front of the blouse with the notched area of the center part of the collar. And I'm just going to stitch it all around to the center back of the neckline area like this. And I'm going to repeat the same process at the other side of the neckline. So now I'm going to do that to both sides of the neckline. Now after pinning this up, I also stitched it onto that area by 1/2 inch. Okay, so now to stitch on the other part, I'm going to take the notched area right here as well, as you can see, and I'm going to fold it by 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to be matching it onto the notch of the center front of the blouse, and I'm going to pin this up like this. Remember, I'm pinning by 1/2 inch. I'm going to further fold by 1/2 inch again, and I'm going to pin this up to the blouse neckline area, making sure that you cover the stitched area. As you can see, I've pinned this up already. It's easier to sew neatly when you pin up first, especially for this kind of. So right now I'm just going to stitch from center back all through the neckline to the other side of the center back. So right now, after stitching this is what it looks like, and I'm almost done already, and the neckline is done already. The only thing remaining here is for you to give it a good pressing. So now onto the sleeve, I've cut a basic long sleeve. You can put any kind of sleeve you desire, but first of all, I hem the bottom part of my sleeve, then join it by the side seam. Now, as you can see, I've already inserted one of the sleeve remaining this area. I'm simply going to match this to the arm side of my dress, and I'm going to stitch it on to the sleeve area. Now, after doing that, the last and final step is to interlock necessary places, especially this front area all around and other rough edges inside the blouse. And now, as you can see, the blouse is beautifully ready. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy this tutorial, and leave your comment on the comment section below. And if you're yet to subscribe to my channel, please subscribe, share my videos, and I'll see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.